we learned something that's really important. All that we were learning, apparently, about the, as I mentioned yesterday, but I have to keep, I mentioned it last time, but I just have to keep thinking about this, is really have to do with the Acharayim, because the building up of the Nukva, that the Mochin going into the Nukva directly from Bina, and the different processes that take place, or different ideas that were about that all had to do with the Acharayim. And then coming around to the front, and then being equivalent to just a dot when she comes to the front, and then the whole process there to make panemias, to bring in the Mochin upon him, which for some reason seems to be that she attaches herself, this an Acharayim now that's on the Ponim, and she attaches herself to the Ponim that's already there, that is the Ponim of the Ponim. The Acharayim of the Ponim attaches itself to the Ponim of the Ponim. Now that's a detail I don't think we ever saw before. It's very interesting whether or not it's consistent with anything. But let's go back and look at this again. And I had something else that I was thinking about here. It says Be'inyan Seder Tikkun Kad Shaus. So actually this runs a little bit. So, because I don't know where it goes, but we'll find out. Divri Rabbeinu Hadrizal, Be'inyan Seder HaTikunim HaZibuga Mena'aze B'kol Yom V'yom, B'meshach HaKad Shah, Yesh Bechem Shaila V'Stibras Rabos Ma'od. So I was thinking about that. What are the Shailas and the Stiras? Actually, we were learning about this earlier, that there's one place where it said, I think when we were back in the regular part of this Shar, he said, for example, that between the time of dark and the time of midnight, something happens. But in other places, it says something else happens. And then you go from midnight, you go on to the next, from midnight down to daybreak, you have different kinds of places that say different kinds of things of what's happening in those times. Because of the Yasha, the Varav Sheshis, Yashva Zechem Zeb, it's very difficult to see how they could work together. Look at Moshe Shiniz. They struggled over this. Now, that's a good question. Let me see, I gotta did something wrong here. Okay, that's a good question. What is the maskontan? Then that's because he brought this idea in, which is the Seder of the Kadsha. So they really could explain it a wondrous way, but so now let's come and let's talk about it. I was thinking, maybe I need to take a scorecard, or how am I going to understand this, to try to understand this better. He says, the secret of Tikkun Dezun. So we already explained previously, until that point. So we went all the way to Ponim and have a yichud. Called parts of Kolam Ahu Ponim, that will be talked about. Which is really everything that we've been learning about, according to them. Because mochin the ach come in at a point. As parts of a ponim shalom. And that becomes the big time zivug. So now we see like this, that the order of this tikkun has three different parts to it. Tikkun ha'ach, shebo nimshach in the mochin da'ach lezun, v'nishalemis kumas ha'ach shalahem. So it builds up their whole backsides. Le'esef sviros. Then there's a dormita, he said, v'chanisira, and then there's a nisira that comes after the rishona, and then there's a yichud in which they're lifted up to the chek abba be'ima, b'chek abba be'ima, v'chein tikkun parts of a panim dezun, and so then you go into the parts of the panim dezun, shabol nimshach and amochin the panim dezun, V'nishalemes kumas haponim shalachem le'eser spheros, and now that becomes eser spheros, and then what you have is the zivug gamor. That is the whole story right there. So, Chiddush Rishash. Now, that sounded great. So here comes the Rishash and said like this. So he really hasn't dealt so clearly with what these kashas are, what these problems are. So he says, Rishash in the Nar Sholem, he says like this, Shemilvad Seder Chatikun Arogal Namaase B'Kol Yom, B'Partzufi Zona Pratim and the Sakte B'Tfilos, which really have to do with what we could do in the Tfilos. Because with them there's going to be a tikkun every single 24 hours. There's going to be a complete tikkun. Yesh no parts of acher, but there's another parts of. Now this interesting use of the word parts of. So parts of is a system, the way I understood it, for processing the light of Hashem. This way that's coming, making it digestible down below. But there's another parts of. He says nigra parts of kadsha hakolo. So it says it's called it's important to see here that he calls this the Kadsha Kolel, Shabo Nimshach Seder Hatikun, because into that Kadsha there's an order, it extends a Seder Hatikun and Nitzka Shlosha Yom, and it takes 3 days to go through it. The Haylach B'Shukol Echad Machatikun Echad B'Niskarim Na'asa B'Meshach Yom Echad Shalachem. That he says what? Shekol Echad Mahatikunim, each one of the Tikunim that we're mentioning is going to take 3 days in order to get it done. So what is this? First of all, what is it about? I mean, what are we talking about? So the Hidach B'Kol Yom Nesakim parts of Chodesh, a different flow of light. Let's call it that. As a whole through this system of this new parts of the flow comes every day. Shebemeshach shisa alfish shnin nisaktim called yom partsufim chadoshim. Every single one of the 6,000 years, they're going to be different partsufim. Every single year. Achein haparts of a nisaket ba'osach hayom lo nishlam tikunu b'bayom. But what happens like this? He says that the partsuf that is built on this one particular day, no nishlam tikunu b'bayom. Its tikkun doesn't finish off on that day. But it takes 3 days in order to actually fix this tikkun. The parts of Shal Yom Echad, let's say for example like this, the parts of Yom Echad, B'Shvua, let's say Sunday, or because that's today, Yom Rishon. He said, Echad B'Shvua B'Nimshach Mesha Tikkun B'Yom Echad, but also the close base and the Oz Gimel. Now, so right enough, I'm really losing track of what the bouncing ball is here. So what are we talking about here? He says it's a tikkun that gets placed. I think I should read it again. It says like B'Kol Yom Nesakim parts of Chodesh, a new parts of. K'nodesh B'Meshach Shisa Alfish Shnin Nesaktim Kol Yom, every day Partsufim Chadashim. So this sounds like what he's saying, that you have every day, it takes 3 days to fix the first day, 3 days to fix the second day, and so on and so forth. And this is constantly going on in the background. Its tikkun is not finished on that particular day. But the tikkun continues on for the course of 3 days. Nimshach meshach tikkunu b'yomim aleph, beis, and gimel. Parts of Yom Beis, B'Shvua, Nimshach, where am I here? Meshach, Tikkun B'Yomim Beis, Gimel, and Daled. V'chein Kulam Derek Zeh. So you have all this thing going around and deeper and deeper and deeper, because you have 365 days in the year, let's say, and every single one of them is going, if that's in a solar year. I don't know how they how this is actually, how it comes out. Let's go on. The Seder HaTikun Hu, now this is the order of the Tikun. Shebemeshach shlosha yomim na'aseh b'kol yom cheluk echad meshloshes chaloki hatikun and niskarim. So there are apparently 3 different portions, and every day, let's read again. Na'aseh, he says, He says, Atikun Hushi B'meshach Shlosha Yomim, over the course of 3 days, Na'aseh B'kol Yom, every single day, Chelik Echad Mishloshas Chelki HaTikun. So the Tikun has 3 parts. He says on his Karim, Tikun Ach, and he says, now you're going to list them to help me out here a little bit. Tikun Ach, Tikun upon him, and then the Zivug. Once again, this is new information for me. He says, every single one of the days, one portion of the Shlosha Chelki HaTikun. So what are the Chelki HaTikun? The Tikun is Tikun Ach, Tikun upon him, and the Zivug. Those are the Partsufim. So he's going to talk about it more. Now, I'm not sure exactly what to do here. I just, like this is all new territory. Just want to see how far this goes. So let's read another one. Biyom Arishon Na'asa Tikun Na'ach Shal parts of Zun Hanisakni Biyom Zeh. So now you see that the Tikun is really Ach, Ponim, and Yichud on the 3rd day of each set. So I don't know how this works out, because after you get past the 2nd day, so the 2nd day you do. Well, anyway, let's go on. The Hailer Sheniknasa the Mochin the Ach Lazah, that is the Mochin to come to the Ach Lazah on that whole 1st day. Mamshichem al Hanuk, and he takes those mochin that he gets, and he brings them till the Nuk, v'nisakenis avhi be'eses sviros asivirosecha, and she also gets built in her 10 sviros. Then he said, B'yom hasheni na'asach chelak hasheni shalatikun, then you do the 2nd part. What's the 2nd part? It's going to be the panim. The b'techilas halayla na'asis hadormita, a mistalkim a mochin b'zer anpen, and the mochin leave zer anpen. B'nimshachin a mochin to tevuna chanuk, then the mochin of tevuna come into the nuk. V'la'achim b'chatzas alayla olin zun l'chek abba v'ima mizdavim zivug b'ir rishayna. The kli v'rucha, that's what he says. It's making a kli, that the rucha could go into it. It goes into it, comes back out. V'la'achim b'kan nimshachin zun ha-mochin upon him, and then come to zun mochin upon him. So now you have the mochin the ach and the mochin upon him. Then he comes like this. This is where I'm going to stop here. And if we have time, we'll go back. We're out of time. You want to read this one? Can we read this one?
Sure.
Huh?
No, we'll stop here.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Okay, that was the shir today. This is Baruch Fleischman. This is a very, very deep subject for me, but it's condensing things, and it takes a lot to digest. It's very sweet.